everybody, I'm Jonathan Randall, and welcome to another episode of How You Like Me Now. I hope everybody's doing well out there. I am in pretty good spirits. Spring is in full swing here in New York, and the city is just a completely different place. Everybody's outside, people are in a better mood, and I am super excited for the summer. I wish everybody out there a great one as well. I can't thank you guys enough for your support and for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. I actually wasn't feeling like doing a podcast today. I wasn't feeling like doing a recording, but I'm like, I gotta do it. I gotta keep up the momentum. We've been doing so many episodes. I believe this is episode 25, I think, which is pretty incredible. So again, thanks for tuning in. I'm still here, even though I'm like, what am I gonna talk about? I don't know, but I think I got a few things to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about was an unfortunate event. You know, people are in better mood because the weather is nice here in the city, but sadly bad things are still happening, like the murder of Jordan Neely. For those of you that don't know, Neely was a 30-year-old Michael Jackson impersonator that got choked to death on the subway. Now, he wasn't choked to death on the subway because he was impersonating Michael Jackson touching kids on there. No, he was choked to death because he was homeless, because he was hungry, and because he suffered from mental health issues. So what happened was he was on the subway, and apparently he was aggressively screaming that he was hungry and he was thirsty and he was fed up, and that's when a 24-year-old Marine veteran named Danny Penny put him in a chokehold for 15 minutes and killed him. Now, the New York medical examiner ruled that it was homicide, but Penny was questioned by the police, but then he was released and he has not been charged in Neely's murder. I take the subway all the time. I come across homeless people that aren't really pleasant to be around, people that kind of sometimes scare me a little bit. I don't put them in a chokehold. What I do is I just move to the next car. I don't know why this 24-year-old didn't do that, why he thought it was appropriate for him to put this guy in a chokehold, but I'm sure it had to do with the fact that he was homeless looking and the fact that he was black. He's gone on record now Penny has gone on record saying that he didn't mean to, kill him. It wasn't his intentions. He feels bad about it, but he's still I don't know what you expect when you're choking somebody for over 15 minutes. I don't know why they felt like they had to subdue him in that manner. According to other eyewitnesses, while he was being aggressive, he wasn't attacking anybody. He didn't touch anybody, but unfortunately they did this and he is now dead, and I don't know if they are gonna make charges against him. It seems like this guy might just get away with it because it was a homeless guy that was really troubled, and I'm sure also the fact that he was African American plays into it a little bit. I'm sad to say that that's the reality of America, but it totally is. And people are getting shot for going to the wrong house or getting in the wrong car, and apparently just for being a crazy person on the subway, which New York City has ton of them. There were protests throughout the city. People got arrested because they jumped on the subway tracks and they wouldn't let the train through, so they got arrested, but the guy who murdered somebody didn't get arrested, which is very weird. I'm sure there's gonna be further investigations about this. So hopefully some sort of justice will prevail at the end. If you see somebody that you believe is suffering from mental health issues, don't physically attack them. I would suggest, trying to get some of the authorities or try to offer them help. Maybe come to them with love if you can and understanding, because it's very sad. Apparently Jordan Neely's mother was also murdered by strangulation years ago, and he's been homeless, and there's a lot of concern for him before he passed away. I guess he had a presence in Times Square and on the subways as a Michael Jackson impersonator and being a very gifted dancer. So it's very unfortunate that his life was taken, especially in the manner that it was taken. And it's upsetting. It's a crazy world. I mean, the homeless people have it bad enough. You can understand why some of them are, mentally disturbed. That's probably a lot of the reasons why they are homeless. But also, I'm sure living on the streets and living in that manner doesn't help their mental state. So yeah, I would suggest if you see someone that's being crazy, especially if they're not physically assaulting or start touching anybody, just move away, move to another space, maybe, notify a police officer, even though they don't have, the best reputation, especially when it comes to subduing black people, but don't take justice into your own hands. I don't know if this guy thought he was being like a vigilante or something and that he was going to strangle this guy and save everybody on the subway car. But, New Yorkers are pretty used to people being crazy on the subway car. I think he should have just minded his own business. I mean, of course, if Neely would have physically assaulted somebody and then he stepped in, it would have been one thing. But just because he's screaming in an aggressive manner, yeah, welcome to New York. Okay, another thing that I was reading about, which is a little weird, that there is an ice cream stand. Somebody put an ice cream stand about 200 meters outside of Auschwitz. So right outside of the Auschwitz Museum, somebody put an ice cream, which is really inappropriate, I feel. I heard the museum thinks that it's inappropriate. Many people are on social media are being like, this is ridiculous. How could there be an ice cream spot right there? A couple weeks ago, I talked about how when I was at the gift shop at the Auschwitz, in Auschwitz, they sold Snickers bar, which I thought was completely inappropriate. So first, when I was reading about this, I'm like, they're totally right. How did this person have the nerve to set up ice cream right outside of Auschwitz, where over 1 million people were murdered, a death camp where people were sent to the gas chambers, not the place for an ice cream stand. But the more I thought about it, I thought, you know what? After going to Auschwitz is a pretty sad and depressing place. When you leave, you do need some cheering up, and nothing cheers people up like ice cream. So maybe it's good to have ice cream outside. It's not like they're selling the ice cream inside Auschwitz. It's outside. It's 200, 250 meters outside. And once you leave, you need to be cheered up a little bit because it is one of the most depressing places in the world. So maybe we shouldn't point our finger at it. Maybe we should be like, hey, this is a good place to have ice cream. This is when people need cheering up after they leave Auschwitz. Now, I mentioned before that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do on the podcast today. I was like, oh, what am I going to do the podcast? I don't know if I have anything to talk about. First of all, I could always talk about things that are going on in Israel and Palestine because there's always horrible things happening. I hope, and on the podcast, I like to talk about more things. I am a comedian and I am an actor and a writer, and I like to hope I have a diverse body of work, and it's not just all about the Palestinian cause. Of course, I do care dearly about Palestine. I hate the way Israel has treated Palestinians. I hate so much that has happened when it comes to the Palestinian people, but there is more to me than just that. But let's talk about Israel and Palestine. And when I say all that, I'm like, all right, but we got to talk about Israel and Palestine because there is things to talk about. Israel demolished an elementary school in the West Bank, which was funded by the European Union. Now, first, Israel authorities had agreed to hold off on demolishing the school pending a court appeal, but then the military just decided to get rid of it anyways. And this is something that Palestinians face regularly, that Israel says that the buildings aren't built with permits, even though it is nearly impossible for Palestinians to get building permits. And while Israel claims that they demolished the school out of safety, many see it as just another way of them trying to drive Palestinians from the land and to prevent them from having the right to self-determination. And you know what? I have an idea. If the school, was unsafe, which Israel is claiming, why couldn't you guys then build it safer, make it a better school, build the building safe so it's okay instead of demolishing it? That would be a much better look, right? If the headlines were Israel helps fix schools so Palestinian children can learn, instead of being Israel demolishes school and Palestinian kids aren't going to be able to get an education now because they decided to demolish this school. And I know they're saying they did it for safety, but the real reason they did it is for land, because they want that land to be Israeli land and not Palestinian land. And by doing so, not only are they driving Palestinians from the land, but they are continuing their constant impeding of Palestinian quality of life. They don't want them to have a good quality of life. They don't want them to feel like they are safe or secure someplace. They want to keep them on edge. They want to keep them under Israel's heel, which apparently is what they tell the military there is, how they always want to keep Palestinians looking over their shoulder and living in fear. It's very sad and it's very unfortunate. I know people in the EU are upset because they funded that school. Of course, these children are upset. I mean, everybody should be upset. Why are they tearing down schools? Stop tearing down Palestinian schools. Stop tearing down Palestinian buildings. Help them build a better building, okay? Grant them building permits. But they don't want to do that because they don't want Palestinian building homes on the land because they want that land for Israelis. It's very unfortunate. This is another thing I want to talk about. I saw one news story about it. This morning, I was seeing tons of videos of what they were saying was a Palestinian man being beaten by like 6 or 7 Israelis. And I kept trying to find like articles or news about this because I kept seeing this video and I couldn't find any information about it whatsoever. But this video, which obviously had like an Arab man who was getting the shit kicked out of him. And I kept looking, and then finally I found an article, and the article said that he wasn't a Palestinian man, he was Druze. He was a Druze security guard, Israeli Druze. He was working in Safat, and apparently 7 Israelis, which are all on video, Israeli settlers, they beat the shit out of him, they were kicking him, they were hitting him with sticks, they threw like a metal traffic barrier on top of him. So apparently he wasn't Palestinian, he was Druze, and he started screaming, I'm Druze, because apparently they heard him speak Arabic, and then they started kicking the shit out of him. That's how dangerous it is for Palestinians when it comes to Israeli settlers, that even if they think you're Palestinian, they will still like wreak violence upon you, which is absolutely horrible and atrocious and like really sad. So this guy got beat up. I heard that 2 out of the 7 people had been arrested. I don't know if any charges were brought against them. Typically, when settlers cause violence on Palestinians, nothing happens to them. I'm hoping that something will happen to these. I mean, they are on video for the whole world to see doing something awful. And I mean, I feel like this is the type of environment that has been created by this right-wing government, that has been created in Israel, where like Israeli settlers are backed by the military and they feel like they could do whatever they want. And typically they get away with it. So this is unfortunate that this happened, and I hope they are brought to justice, and I hope the guy that got beat up, he's okay. Apparently he was in the hospital, and I hope that'll be okay. And I really think that settler violence against Palestinians needs to stop and needs to have be condemned, not only from people all over the world, not only from Israel itself, but from Jews everywhere. We got to stop just being complicit with these settlers and their acts of violence. It's not acceptable. It doesn't represent Jewish values. And it's way past time that, the Jewish community says enough is enough and openly condemns these types of actions. Unfortunately, that's not the only news coming out of, Israel that's bad when it comes to Palestinians. There was an Israeli border officer that was just convicted in an Israeli court of assaulting a Palestinian woman after she pulled off her hijab, started choking her, started shaking her, and they did convict her in the Israeli court, but then since then she's been reinstated at her job as a border officer, which is just absolutely crazy. How crazy is that you could be convicted for assault and then on your job when you're working and then be like, oh, you could go back to your job. It's like, no wonder Palestinians feel so hopeless. No wonder Palestinians feel like, violence is the only option that they have, because even when someone is convicted of doing wrong against them, they still don't really face any consequences or repercussions, which is really disgusting. Anyways, my love out to Palestine. I will continue to raise awareness. I want to thank everyone that's been sending me really kind and nice supportive messages. I really appreciate that. Of course, for every really nice message I get some Israeli either threatening me or calling me names or, telling me I'm a horrible person, which is very unfortunate. But it just shows me, I think, that I'm on the right side and that I'm happy to continuously speaking up for the people that feel like they don't have a voice and nobody cares about them. And just the ugliness that I'm getting from Israelis, and even just other Jewish people, it's like, wow, I can't even imagine the ugliness that Palestinians face by these people, and it's just horrible. Anyways, if you're not following me on social media, please do, at Jonathan Randall. Again, thanks for tuning in. I'm Jonathan Randall. How you like me now?